Got very good Kenyan, of course. Commonwealth Games champion Suleiman of Djibouti will be in amongst the medals for many people. VOJTA of Austria and Nick Willis of New Zealand. I'm just watching on the computer. We'll keep you informed as to whether we do get a confirmed result from that first heat, because it could affect everybody, of course. But at the moment, Halusa joining Tesfaye is in the final. In fact, Paul has just shown me that it has come up now, finally. That's confirmed. And as we look at Silas KIPLAGAT, as I said, the Commonwealth champion, silver medalist in 2011 at the World Championships in Daegu. Again, another man who on his day could win this, but he can also give you some pretty average performances. He was only 6th in the race in Birmingham. Before that in Stockholm and the Grand Prix meeting there indoors, he was in 8th place as well. But he's very up and down so far this year. And Suleiman next to him, similarly so, perhaps not quite as bad. But Nick Willis tends to be a little bit more consistent, and he's been racing initially outdoors in New Zealand, and then a couple of indoor races in Boston and then New York. The 30-year-old will use all of his guile and experience, I'm sure, here, just whether he's got the pace. But Chris O'HARE, we saw what he's capable of outdoors last year. What a year he had, of course, in 2013. And Chris, from the City of Edinburgh club, from the border area, with a chance here, can he make it another world final? So top two guaranteed, and as I said, 3 fastest losers. The first heat was won in around 3:47, so at the minute you'd have to go quicker than 47:48 to get into a fastest loser spot. And Suleiman, our early leader. He was second in Stockholm. Suleiman has only run a couple of races, in fact only one 1500-meter race. He's from the same training camp as Mustaoui, the man who I said was top of the world rankings, but is not competing. 29:48 through the first 200. So these guys look as though they're just setting off a little bit quicker. Don't forget, I think they went through 64 the first 400 in that first heat, and Chris O'HARE just tucked on the inside. No need to worry yet in this early stage, but I think he'll be quite happy that it's a reasonable pace.
Yeah, he will be glad that it's going out, and that is the advantage of going in the second heat and the third heat, is that you do have that information, although it was very late coming through the result, and so I'm not sure these guys knew it as they went to the track, but they only needed to look at the stop clock for the finish to have a rough idea of what pace they need to keep it moving at to give themselves a better chance of having those fastest loser spots, or having at least one of them come from here.
VOJTA on his shoulder. Then we've got Silas KIPLAGAT, Nathan BRANNEN, the experienced Canadian, who's having a good year this year. And then on the inside, Chris O'HARE. Nick Willis happy to sit at the back of that group. Again, as I said, he tends to trust his kick, Nick Willis. It's brought him great success over the years, but as you get older, can you still trust it? Good pace still being set, roughly 30 seconds or so for each of these 200-meter laps. And that will please most of the men here, I'm pretty sure. This is a sort of pace that they should be still fairly comfortable at. And Chris O'HARE just nicely tucked on the inside there. But to get in the top two, when it gets to the 400 metres to go, you've got to be very, very close. And you haven't got to have too many people to move around or too many people to try and run through.
Just a few gaps starting to stretch and open up, and they immediately closed those up there. Chris has got himself in a good position. He was tracking Silas KIPLAGAT, who the Kenyan selectors went with probably on pedigree, but could have gone with the likes of Nixon Chepseva, who is running better coming into these championships. So it'll be interesting to see how sharp he is and how ready for these championships. But Chris absolutely in the right place here and just covering the move, like we said, poised and ready to make that, but doesn't quite want to do that just yet.
No, I like the way Chris O'HARE runs these 1500-meter rounds. He knows where to be at the right time. He just lets KIPLAGAT move outside him there, but he's off the curb. He's got Willis tucked in on the curb here. Nathan BRANNEN now moving through, the experience coming to the front here. So 2 laps to go, 400 metres. Suleiman, where he's been from the beginning, at the front. The man from Djibouti leading them through in a good pace. KIPLAGAT, Willis on the inside, and Chris O'HARE in 4th at the moment.
And can Chris O'HARE just raise it a little bit as he comes into this last lap? He's putting himself out there and now making that move, making it from maybe a little way out, but that's what suits him, and that's how he races best, and he's laying it all on the line and giving himself his best shot of qualifying here.
Good burst of acceleration, but has he got enough to hold them off? Because he didn't break them all. Suleiman goes back past him, then Kiplagat. Nick Willis still very threatening there, the New Zealander on the outside. Only the top two to go through, and look at Willis turning the burners on here, looking very impressive. Suleiman trying to hold him off. Chris O'Hare's got to keep going there. Fastest loser spots available. Kiplagat coming back as well, the Kenyan. These three scrapping it out here. Willis looks comfortable, looks over his shoulder. Suleiman and Willis pulling away. Those two will go through. Kiplagat in second, Chris O'Hare fourth, but much, much faster than the first heat. So that means that Chris has got a good chance. You'll obviously be watching the third heat, where we've got a lot of quality in the third heat to come. But of course, they now know that the target time of around 3:39, 3:40 for Chris O'Hare is something that they can aim at. He's just going to have to cross his fingers and hope. Tough to get through these rounds. I think Chris had a good go there. He probably accelerated a little hard, a little early, because there's lots of good kickers. Suleiman is in great form this year. And Nick Willis, well, what do you say about Nick? Yet again, age of 30, he's still got it in his legs, hasn't he?
He's definitely still got it in his legs. I mean, for me, he was really impressive there. Obviously, Suleiman won it and controlled the race, but Nick Willis was the guy who's coming around his shoulder here, just looking around, little smile. He knows he's got it sewn up, and he's also not going to waste energy. He doesn't need to win the race. Like we said, it doesn't make any difference to where you stand on the start line in a 1500-metre race. You just have to come in that top two, and he had that sewn up, knew that, and he was cruising down the home straight. The two behind him, Chris O'Hare and Kiplagat, had to absolutely keep everything piled on to have a chance of hoping for one of those fastest loser spots. And at the moment, Chris has himself in that position, and in doing that, the two of them have definitely ruled out Lee Emanuel being able to qualify as a fastest loser.
Yep.